What's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We are talking Showdown, Saints versus Buccaneers. This is Sunday Night Football. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm joined by Ellie Hernandez. How's it going over in your neck of the woods, man? How you doing?
Pretty good, man. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's game. We finally got some real football teams playing football, so I think we're gonna have a few more opportunities to win some money.
Thank God, man. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. But it's a rainy day here in LA. It's a Saturday morning. We're recording this. So obviously we don't have ownership. We don't have a lot of information. We have some injuries to talk about. But let's just start overall with the Vegas lines in this game. So New Orleans at Tampa Bay. Looks like Tampa Bay is a pretty decent favorite here. We have a 50.5 total and a 4.5 spread. And just some very basic projections kind of has New Orleans as more projected points for now, but that doesn't really mean much. What are your overall thoughts on this slate? Do you think Tampa Bay is favored too much? Their win probability of about 69%, and they're 4.5-point favorites. I think New Orleans is a good team. They're maybe slowing down. They're maybe not as good as they've been in the past. Are people overreacting to Tampa Bay being pretty good?
No, I don't think they are. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sort of on an upward trajectory. When we're looking at the Saints, I don't think it's the same. They're so heavily dependent upon the success of Alvin Kamara or Kamara, however you're supposed to say his name. I apologize for that, everyone. I should know better by now, but still, Alvin is the heart and soul of that team. So that's causing. I think that's going to cause some issues, especially against the defense. Which, by the way, I've said almost every single time the Tampa Bay has played that they're the second best run defense of last year. Right now, they are the number one rush defense in the NFL. So, I think that's going to open up some serious problems for New Orleans because I'm pretty sure Drew Brees can't throw more than 6 yards down the field. So that's kind of where I'm at for tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
By the way, I call him Kamara, but they call him Kamara on the broadcast. I don't know. I'm gonna just call him Kamara because that sounds cooler to me. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think last week, if you watched New Orleans versus Chicago, that game went into overtime. Chicago somehow stays in these games, and I don't know if that's more evidence against the Saints because I don't think Chicago is that good of a team, and they have a sort of a backup. They have two backup quarterbacks starting for them. I don't know how to judge the Saints because, like I said, maybe last week Chicago just had a better game than usual. But you're right. Breeze just cannot throw the ball downfield. Now, there was a couple nice throws. He threw a touchdown pass to Jared Cook there at the end. It was like, 25, 30-yard touchdown. He still has it in him. But consistently speaking, there's a lot of dump-off passes to Kamara, a lot of slant patterns. I mean, Michael Thomas is questionable in this game. He could start. But even a guy like Michael Thomas, slant passes left and right to this guy. That's why he's getting 140 receptions a year, sort of a thing. Not to say anything bad about Thomas. It's more of a reflection on Drew Brees. Maybe he can't get the ball down the field like he used to. When it comes to Tom Brady, this guy can still sling it, man. He can still sling it. And he makes mistakes. He'll throw a pick six every now and then. But me personally, I like Tom Brady in this matchup a lot better fantasy-wise. So let's move on to injuries here. Let's get a quick look at what we got going on here injury-wise.
So before you get into that, I do want to just say something. So that night that I went with the Tom Brady fade, yeah. I actually didn't lose my ass. He was required for a winning lineup, but
yeah,
I made about 75% of my entry fees back. So it worked out kind of. I didn't lose everything.
Winning back 75% of your entry fees and playing responsibly with your bankroll, that you can play all year, and just trying to get that one first place. That's all you really need. 75% of your winnings back. Hey, I'll take that every time because that sets me up for a good opportunity to get first place later on. So we're looking at injuries. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we've got Chris Godwin is really the only notable sort of injury here, and he's questionable, but I think he's trending towards playing. Last we looked, let me just confirm here real quick with you guys. Actually, you know what? That's wrong. So he's actually probable. So Chris Godwin is probable in this game. That means he's going to play. He was upgraded. New Orleans Saints-wise, we've got Michael Thomas. He's questionable. Now, this is sort of a 90-minute before lock sort of thing. Monitor this on Sunday throughout the day. Be on Twitter, checking things. But don't plan on building with Michael Thomas until you actually hear some good news about him. It looks like Emmanuel Sanders could come back. He's probable. As well as Marquez Callaway is probable as well. Talk to me about these injuries on both sides of the team, starting with Tampa Bay. You got Chris Godwin is coming back. How does this impact the way you build lineups for this team, and just overall as a game goes?
Chris Godwin coming back, it's really probably going to help us a little bit, so we can spread out some ownership. I think everybody's been on Mike Evans since he's been out and trying to get some value at some of these 2 and 3 wide receivers the Bucs have. But I think Chris Godwin could come back and tear it up. I mean, he's really fast, and he gives that team a different dimension that they didn't have with just Mike Evans on the field. And the difference between him and Miller, I can never remember his name.
Scotty Miller.
Anthony.
Yeah.
No, Scotty Miller, right? So he's fast, but he doesn't have the size, and he doesn't have the route running ability that Chris Godwin has. So I like Chris Godwin, especially if he's full probable and isn't projected for a snap count. On the other side of the ball, I think Michael Thomas is the biggest injury that I'm worried about. If Michael Thomas doesn't play, then we're going to have a lot of different opportunities to kind of jam some people in there.
Yeah, for sure. I think Michael Thomas is interesting because we've only seen him play one game this year, and I think he got injured in the middle of the game, something like that. So I don't know how if he comes back, he's considered a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, obviously. I think Devontae Adams is a better player than him overall. That's not to say anything bad about Michael Thomas, but when this guy comes back, he's going to make an impact. The question being, this is week 9, and he's getting his probably some of his first reps of the season almost in week 9. It makes, at his price tag, we'll talk about wide receivers. We'll break each position down, but at his price tag, I am a little bit more cautious with him. If they start him and his ownership is high, I don't know what I want to do with him. We'll get into that in 1 second. So let's actually anything else you want to talk about when it comes to injuries? What about Emmanuel Sanders coming back and also Marquez Callaway?
Yeah, I don't care, to be honest with you. I was high on Emmanuel Sanders earlier in the season, but I also thought Drew Brees was, I don't know, a quarterback still. But he looks like he's a 9th inning pitcher. So he's just throwing these little dink and dunk passes.
Yeah.
Not worried about it. I don't think we need to get too crazy into them.
All right, so let's real quick talk about ownership on this slate. We don't have official ownership projections out yet. It's Saturday morning. Those are more likely to come out on the day. So obviously monitor these things. This is just us guessing, making educated guesses based on the slate. Who do you think? Do you think that Drew Brees is going to be the second highest owned, or do you think Kamara will be the second highest owned?
I honestly don't know about Kamara's ownership. I'm seeing a note here on RG that's saying, given his difficult matchup, they're expecting his ownership projection to be down a lot. So, I disagree with that. I don't think Kamara really is. You play him against any defense, right? It doesn't matter if they're the top defense in the league. He can still go off.
I mean, look, this guy at this point, especially if Michael Thomas is out, this guy is the number 1 wide receiver on the team. So if Michael Thomas is out, I'm gonna have him in every lineup. Whether that's probably not going to be in captain, but it's going to be in the flex. All right, let's just jump right into it, man. Let's just get right into it. We're gonna be talking about. We're going to go position by position here like we do every week. Stick around with us, guys, to the end of the show. We're actually going to be building a lineup together. We're going to be talking about our captain choices and trying to build a lineup just to show you some of the roster construction that's possible with our captain choices. So let's jump right into it. We've got Tom Brady, Drew Brees. You got Tom Brady at 10.6K, and you got Drew Brees at 10K flat. Now, the way the projections are going now, this is all preliminary, obviously. It looks like Drew Brees is getting a little bit more, a little bit higher of a projected point outcome as far from a median aspect. To me, that signals at this exact moment, if I crunch a bunch of lineups, Drew Brees is going to show up more than Tom Brady just because he's cheaper and he's projected more. But don't pay attention to that too much. Me personally, I'm going to love to have Tom Brady. I know we faded him in the last slate simply because just the way the slate worked out. He was expensive. We wanted to get some higher price guys in the flex in there or position players in the lineup.
And it was free leverage,
Yeah, I mean, he was 86
free leverage.
Exactly, he was 86% owned. So that was just look. We made a decision, and it didn't crush our night, but he was in the optimal, and we weren't going to win without him in it. But it is what it is. We made a decision, so I think I'm ready to make.
We were fully expecting, that's what we were preparing for, right? But for the first half there, it definitely seemed like Tom Brady wasn't going to get there. So I mean,
exactly.
It could have definitely gone our way. But anyways, go.
Yeah. So look, I'm ready to make another stand potentially with Drew Brees. If you look at if you just look at his stat lines here, he's pretty consistent all year. The bar is so high for him because he's a Hall of Famer and he's been he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for decades now. And as well as the Saints offense has always been one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. This year, not so much. He has a safe floor. His ceiling is just a lot lower than what it's been in the past. He usually is getting above 250 passing yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns a game, 1 interception at most. He's getting around 20 to 25 at max fantasy points a game. I don't hate playing this guy. I think there's enough value on the slate. You can have both Tom Brady and Drew Brees this week. I just know that fading one of these quarterbacks, if the Saints have a below average output of offense this week, fading Drew Brees, a guy who could maybe get you 12, 13 points as a floor, could get you a lot of leverage. How are you handling this week? I know we always talk about potentially fading one of the quarterbacks. How are you handling this?
So I'm probably going to be a little bit more spread out tonight or tomorrow night. So I will have some stacks with Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Drew Brees. He's an old noodle arm, but he still has the ability to put up those fantasy points. And I don't know. It's going to be hard to try and fade him entirely. I think ownership will lean towards the way that Drew Brees may come in a little bit under-owned. If that's the case, then I'm going to go a little bit heavier on him. But I think you're right on. I think there's enough cheap guys on the slate that you can kind of start jamming some of these guys in there and still be different by playing a cheaper captain or whatever. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see what kind of builds we can come up with.
Yeah, we'll look at ownership when it comes to him tomorrow. We'll just have to figure that out. I mean, I'm assuming he'll probably be in the 40 to 50, like on the low end, and he could be a lot higher depending on the builds and whether or not Michael Thomas is in or out. If Michael Thomas is out, there's no reason not to get Drew Brees in your lineup, in my opinion, simply because I think he's probably going to be needed for the optimal. If he gets you 20 fantasy points, he might be needed. Running back wise, for the Saints, let's talk about Alvin Kamara at 11.2K. He's going to be the highest owned player on the slate, most likely. Maybe behind Tom Brady, obviously, but position players, he'll be the highest owned. He's got a really good projection. If you crunched out a couple hundred lineups, he would be in 60 to 70% of all your lineups. I'm okay with embracing Kamara. I think his ownership will actually be a lot lower than deserved if Michael Thomas comes back in, simply because of pricing. What really interests me here is, once again, Latavius Murray is at 2.4K. which is insane to me because I know he hasn't had the greatest output this season. It's been pretty pedestrian. You're talking about, he's got 4, 5, 7. Then he had a 21 point output in week 4. And then it's sort of right around 6 or 7 points. Now, that's not going to win you a GPP, but he's getting the opportunity. And there's always a situation where this guy is getting opportunity in the red zone. He's getting receptions. He's getting targets. He should, in my opinion, he should have a couple more touchdowns this year. As sort of whether it was stolen on the goal line, whether Drew Brees snuck it in from the 1 yard line, whatever that is. At 2,400, if this guy gets a touchdown, he gets 6 receptions, he gets 50, 60 yards on the ground, I think you're going to need him, and especially at that price tag. What are your thoughts on Kamara and Latavius Murray, and will you have both of these guys in the same lineup?
Yeah, I will. I think it's going to be, first of all, you're absolutely right. Him being priced so low is kind of egregious, I feel like, for a showdown slate like this. If Michael Thomas it ends up not playing, he becomes probably one of the most valuable players at that price on the slate, right? So I'll be keeping an eye on the injury report, but either way, I'm still going to have a healthy exposure to Latavius Murray. And yeah, I think you can run them both with Kamara. Run the handcuff, right? Kamara and Murray. I did that for literally in a season long 2 years ago. I did that for an entire season. I had both guys as my starting running back, and it paid off. But, obviously in Showdown, you want to get a little bit different, and you can run a nice 4-2 stack and pretty much capture the entire Tampa Bay receiving core with Tom Brady and then run it back with both running backs. I know it's really kind of counterintuitive if you think the score is going to lean towards the Bucs, but I mean, at this point, Alvin Kamara is the best player on that team, and Latavius Murray spells the best player on the team. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity, and honestly, I would rather try to rely on Alvin Kamara trying to make a play in the open field than relying on some dusty-ass receiver or even Jared Cook, for that matter, to try and get there.
I'd rather get Latavius Murray over Traquan Smith, like over a lot of these random wide receivers on the Saints that we just aren't sure about, especially we just don't know if Michael Thomas is coming back, and if he does come back, how does that affect the offense? I'd rather get more Latavius Murray. Last week in that game against the Bears, it could be that they're scripting out, the first 15, 20 plays, whatever it is that these coaches are doing. But out of the first 5 plays, he touched the ball 4 times. And he caught 1 ball and he got 3 rushes out of the first 5 plays of the game. So they're whether they're testing out the defense to see if they want to use him more to sort of figure out the looks of the defense, I don't know. But to me, a guy starting in the game and getting the ball like that, it provides a lot of opportunity, and for $2,400, I would not be afraid to get this guy in almost every lineup because he's one of those guys that if you get 2 touchdowns out of him, and you have him in a lot of your lineups, you're going to be profiting pretty good.
Right.
Only other guy to talk about for the Saints, in my opinion, would be Ty Montgomery. He was activated off the IR. It's a risky-ass play, but at $200, Ty Montgomery is one of these gadget players that, on third down, maybe he's in the backfield, maybe he catches a couple passes out of the backfield, maybe he gets a random draw on 3rd and 15, things like that to keep an eye on. I'm not saying you want to play this guy in a handful of your lineups because he's probably going to get a goose egg, especially just coming off the IR. Just keep an eye on Ty Montgomery. If he ends up in 1 or 2 of your lineups out of 20 or 40 or whatever, I don't think you have to X him out. I think you can keep him in your player pool for this game. Moving on to a little bit muddier of a situation on Tampa Bay when it comes to the backfield. We've got Leonard Fournette at 6.8K, and we've got Ronald Jones at 6.6K. Now, the way the projections are going now, it looks like Fournette is really picking up a lot more projected points, almost double of what Ronald Jones is getting. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I think they're overdoing it there a little bit. But in my opinion, I think it's all because of the usage from last week. Ronald Jones, it could have been. Didn't he fumble last week, or not
Yeah,
last week? But it was. Yeah, it was last week. It was the last Showdown slate. Was that
yeah,
Monday night that we did this? All these are blending together at this point.
yeah. I think it was Monday night.
Anyways, we got Tampa Bay on a Showdown slate last week, and Ronald Jones fumbled, and Bruce Arians he doesn't deal with that shit. If you look
Right,
at him wrong, you might be sitting on the bench the rest of the game. So it could have been a situation where he fumbled, and Bruce Arians says, "You know what? I've had enough of this. Let's get Leonard Fournette in there." I don't know. I think it's the projections are over exaggerating slightly, simply because Ronald Jones is a starting running back for this team. Now
right,
I like Fournette. Once again, I don't have a problem, especially at this price, getting Fournette and Ronald Jones in the same lineup. I, I have no problem doing that if you're doing 4-2 or 5-1 Tampa Bay stacks. There's no reason not to. Real quick, I want to get your opinion on this because I know you have a good take on this. But if you look at the snaps from last week, Fournette had 75% of the snaps or
right.
73 to Ronald Jones 25%. He had 25 routes run. He had 6 targets, and he had 15 rush attempts. Basically, Leonard Fournette was the starting running back last week, if you look at the numbers. But I don't think that that's consistent with how it's been all season. What are your thoughts on the splits between these guys? And is Ronald Jones even worth playing? Because I don't think his ownership is going to be very high.
If their ownership is low, I'll have exposure to both guys. Probably pretty decent. I'll be fairly balanced. I won't stack both of them in the same lineup,
Yeah.
just because they'll be taking carries away from each other. And again, BA is going to ride the hot hand there, I think. And if you fumble, you're out. If you miss a block, there's a good chance you could be out too. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how it plays out, but I'll have a little bit of exposure there. To be honest, generally I love Ronald Jones, and I'm okay with throwing him in captain spot and kind of running that down. But with today's slate, I think with Latavius Murray being so low priced, like if unless his ownership is just way more than I expected it to be, I would much rather just stack up Mike Evans and Chris Godwin any type of way or whatever that I can to jam in some of these better players on the Tampa Bay passing offense. It looks like they're going to throw for 370 yards pretty much every game at this point. So, I want to get those opportunities on the other end of the ball. And again, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette could both crush. But I just don't think that's going to be the target in this one. If this game stays anywhere near close, they're going to be throwing the ball. So, yeah, I'll have a decent amount of exposure, but again, I'm going to be leaning more towards the passing game, unless there's an injury that comes out of nowhere. So,
Yeah, I'm actually, now that I hear you talk about this, it actually makes total sense. Like, there's no reason to have these guys. I know negatively correlated plays and Showdown, sometimes it's okay to do that. But I think this offense has there's so much volume when it comes to the wide receivers, and there's so much opportunity for the wide receivers on this team, especially considering the pricing, that I think I'm just going to limit sort of Ronald Jones. And I don't know that I want a lot of Ronald Jones because I just don't know how they're going to handle this. I might just kind of fade the position overall and hope that
right.
Tom Brady just gets going and he's passing to Godwin, he's passing to Evans, he's passing to Antonio Brown, whoever it is, even Gronk. I mean, there's 4 or 5. He's got legit 5 targets that he can throw to.
And here's the other thing to keep in mind. You've said this on every Tampa Bay or Tom Brady showdown that we've ever done. He's probably the best short yardage rushing quarterback in the history of the league.
Totally.
I think he has like a 97% conversion rate on sneaks under 1 yard. So he's going to vulture a touchdown at some point this season. He did it last year. He vultured, 2? I mean, it's going to happen. So when you start spreading out the backfield opportunities this much, I mean, you're starting to pull away those opportunities to score a touchdown.
Totally. I mean, there's an opportunity where it's 3rd and goal from the 1, and he sneaks it in multiple times. It's just, it can happen. And at that point, if you don't have Tom Brady, and if you've got a bunch of Ronald Jones, your night might be pretty much over at that point.
And speaking of sneaks, Nick Mullins needs to go back and watch some Tom Brady footage. That was
Dude,
probably the worst quarterback sneak I've ever seen in my life.
thank God that we have two NFL teams playing each other this week on a showdown
Right.
slate. The past two or three, actually the past three have been absolutely brutal.
Well,
I
it
mean,
doesn't
I've
look
got
like
my ass
anybody
kicked.
that, in to be honest, like I think the game could have gone a little bit differently, but nobody had any interest in covering Devontae Adams. And honestly, I don't know if you can.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah, those Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. That's an unfair matchup, and
It's a
I only
dangerous
hope.
team, for sure.
Right, I only hope Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins can be something similar because those guys are incredible. But anyways, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm digressing.
All right, so I don't think we need to even talk about LaShawn McCoy and Keyshawn
No,
Vaughn. There's no reason to. In fact, I probably just wasted everyone's time by even mentioning his name. So let's move on to an interesting side of the ball here. The wide receivers for Tampa Bay. So we've got Mike Evans at 8,400. Chris Godwin coming back after an injury at 7.6K. And interestingly enough, we've got Antonio Brown out of the psych ward, starting in the NFL at 7.4K. Scotty Miller, 4,800. And then from there, we could talk about some other options under 1,000. But for now, how are you handling Mike Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown, sort of the holy trinity of this offense?
Unless Chris Godwin is out, I don't care about it. Antonio Brown. Look, man, he hasn't played an NFL snap in a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
I get it. He could be in incredible shape, but warming up against, your cousin and running routes against your cousin isn't the same thing as playing against a pro cornerback. Now, here's the thing: is if he starts lining up in the slot against this terrible secondary against slot receivers. Remember, their nickel, the Saints nickel corner might be one of the worst in the league, and if that's where he's going to be lining up the entire game, then I might have to switch my script on this entirely because there's no way that anybody can cover him in that position.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm going to have a healthy exposure of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin's, stacked or going either way, right? Leaning towards one. I'm going to have a couple of variations because I think you can stack up this wide receiver core and get some pretty good points. And Antonio Brown might come in fairly high owned. So
Yeah.
by getting rid of him, and look, man, $200 more, you get Chris Godwin.
It's a
Doesn't
no-brainer.
make sense to me.
It's a no-brainer. If Antonio Brown should have been, I don't know, 5K,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I think that's a fair price for him, and I think his ownership would have been a lot higher. I still think his ownership can be high because he's a name, and people are excited about him. I just feel like there's a quote from Bruce Arians, and basically Bruce Arians says that Antonio Brown could see anywhere from 10 to 35 snaps. It's super vague. Like, if he sees 10 snaps, he's not worth even playing. If he sees 35 snaps, obviously he's worth a try. Now, an interesting thing with Antonio Brown that I noticed last week. So, for whatever reason, Bruce Arians had Jaden Mickens playing basically 90% of the snaps. And he wasn't even on the DraftKings player. He wasn't even in the player pool. You couldn't even play this guy if you wanted to. He was playing over Watson. He was playing over Tyler Johnson. And for whatever reason, Jaden Mickens was in most of the game. Now, I'm just making an educated guess here. This is just my opinion straight up. It's possible that Jaden Mickens represents sort of what they want to do with Antonio Brown. Maybe he's similar speed, similar body style. Maybe they wanted to work Jaden Mickens into the offense for a game to sort of, get some real-time practice with this particular sort of a player. That's just me speculating, but there's got to be a reason why Jaden Mickens was playing last week so much. And if that's the case, if they're just going to plug Antonio Brown into that role, there is a chance that Antonio Brown could have a huge game. But to me, I'm likely to say he's going to be over-owned, and I'd rather get Chris Godwin at $200 more in every one of my lineups. I don't have a problem getting one or two lineups with Antonio Brown just in case, but I'm just going to take a bold stand here and say, look, The chances are he's not going to go off for 2 or 3 touchdowns. He's been out of football for over a year. And maybe Bruce Arians is going to work him in. He's not just going to plug him in. And maybe Mickens gets most of those snaps at that position. I don't know how to play it, but that's how I'm going to play it. I just don't know how it's going to work out. It could go either way.
I'm with you, man. Honestly, I'm going to have I think Chris Godwin's better than Mike Evans. Mike
Absolutely.
Evans is obviously a more physical receiver and has the ability to make those one-on-one catches, but Chris Godwin's more complete, and I think he can take the top off any defense. So
I think Mike Evans is a 4-catch, 2-touchdown, 50-yard kind of guy, and that could obviously get you into the optimal. But Chris Godwin is the kind of guy that can get you 170, 2 touchdowns, 9 receptions. I think he is a clear number one. I love Mike Evans as well. But the way they use Chris Godwin with Tom Brady, he has that home run ability, and that's what I want, especially a guy coming off of injury who's probably going to be lower owned. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin are around the same ownership, which is absolutely insane to me. But simply because, Chris Godwin's coming back from injury, he's injury prone. And Mike Evans is a safe bet. We all know that Mike Evans is going to get targets. We all know that Mike Evans. Look, first of all, Mike Evans, like I say, this dude could pull a hammy walking out onto the field and be out for 8 weeks. Like it's super possible. Right. So I'm not willing to go all in on Mike Evans like I would with Chris Godwin. That's just my opinion.
And I do have one more thing to say about AB before we head over to the Saints. Bruce Arians, look, we're Bruce Arians fans. He was Cardinals head coach for a while. We understand his offense. Stepping into his offense and trying to learn it in 8 days is not as easy as it is for some other teams.
Yeah.
If you are not where you're supposed to be, you cannot be playing wide receiver in this offense. They are built to take the top off and have several different options for the quarterback. And that requires some consistent route running and to understand the playbook. And I don't know if AB is there yet. The last time they were coach and player was 2009. So, I mean, it's been almost a decade or over a decade since the last time they worked together.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Now, again, pay attention to ownership. If he's just super low owned, then I don't think it's going to be a bad idea to have some exposure to him. But I'm not there.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm done. I'm off my soapbox about the wide receivers and
One more thing to add to that. There's something to say about Tom Brady rallying for this guy to come onto the team. He, you could almost say that he was responsible for them signing Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is staying with this guy, with Tom Brady and his family. Tom Brady can do whatever the hell he wants. He can throw to whoever the hell he wants. So if Tom Brady wants to throw to Antonio Brown, he's gonna make it happen. So that's one thing to think about. I'm not to say that Tom Brady is gonna throw to Antonio Brown to prove a point or whatever, but I think he likes this guy enough, and they have enough chemistry that even last year with the Patriots in the first game, he threw a touchdown to him. I think he had 5-6 receptions in that game, and that was only one game.
So I guess to summarize the AB discussion, right? We have no idea, and we're going to be preparing to build lineups based on we have no idea. But,
exactly.
We're not entering 150 lineups. So we have to take a stand somewhere, and that's kind of why we talk this out like this. So if Tyson's game script is what we're leaning towards, I may have maybe 2 or 3 lineups exposed to Antonio Brown just to cover that opportunity. So that's kind of the way this is our style, right? And this is how we're going to build our lineups to make sure that we're covering those range of outcomes, but not getting too crazy on a guy that we really kind of want to fade.
Yeah, you got to take a stand. You can't play everybody. Right. We're doing 20, 40 lineups, something to that effect. You just can't play everybody. You got to take a stand. You don't want to spread out too much because then now you're mixing in some low probability plays that you might hit on. But now you're stuck with a bunch of high-price guys or middle-of-the-road price guys that might not go off. So just take a stand, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. Move on to the next slate. That's how I'm handling it. All right, so let's move on from this wide receivers core. Like I said, you've got Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, Justin Watson, and Jaden Mickens as other random options. These guys could catch a touchdown pass. It's so hard to tell now that Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown are being introduced back into this team.
Right.
So let's move over to New Orleans here. New Orleans wide receivers. We've got Michael Thomas, who is questionable. We won't know about him until probably 90 minutes before lock. And who knows, maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday afternoon, we hear some news from Adam Schefter or something about whether or not he's playing. Just keep an eye on that. But at 9.8K, if he does play, he's clearly one of the best players on the field. He might go under-owned because of all the Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin action on the other side of the field. You also have Emmanuel Sanders at 5.8K. You've got Traquan Smith at 3.4K, which is really interesting to me because if Michael Thomas does not play, I think Traquan Smith is an amazing play. And I usually don't like Traquan Smith because at one point he was priced up to like 8K or something like that because he was kind of the number one wide receiver on the team. But in my opinion, if he's a second option, Traquan Smith is a great play, and an even better play if he's a third option because no one's going to be paying attention to him. He'll slip through the cracks. That's where he really shines as a second or third option, not as a number one guy. Anybody else? How do you want to handle this wide receiver core for New Orleans?
Yeah, Michael Thomas is the biggest piece. Depending on what he does, is if he plays, is going to determine my exposure to the other guys. Emmanuel Sanders, don't have much interest in him. May have a couple lineups with him. Traquan Smith, I'm kind of with you. I think he has an interesting price tag. But again, he needs one for 60 yards and a touchdown. That's what he's on the field for. And if he doesn't get it, you lost a square. But again, that's the kind of opportunity that we want in a low-owned play. So there's a possibility that he can get you there. But one guy that I find really interesting, and I know I kind of switched my mind from earlier in the show here, but Marquez Callaway at $200 is not terrible. And I understand that, Michael Thomas coming back, Emmanuel Sanders coming back, but he was making plays with the opportunities that he was getting. I mean,
Absolutely.
We're talking about 1 target in his first game, 6 the next, and then 10 in his third game. Yeah. It looks like Drew Brees might like him. And at $200, I don't think he's a terrible dart to throw. And if he's coming in low owned, which I fully expect him to be,
no one's going to have this guy. Yep, no one's going to play him.
And here's the thing, dude. Richie James was 5% owned on Sunday, or whatever day that was. I don't even know the days of the week anymore. But
Thursday, Thursday.
He wasn't he the optimal captain?
Yeah, he was. And you know why? Because he was questionable, and he was ruled in last minute. At that point, I had already built all my lineups. So I'm like, shit, what the hell am I going to do? I got to actually fit this guy in. Thankfully, I got some of them. But yeah, not to steal your point, but yeah, exactly. It's all because of news and just no one thought about him. He was 5% owned.
And I'm not saying that this is the same situation because obviously the Saints have more than 3 offensive players.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to come out and do Richie James types numbers, get 10 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. But Marcus Callaway at $200 is definitely he's probably going to be like 4% owned, 5% owned. So you can get 3 lineups with him and build I'm talking Alvin Kamara captain and just literally jamming in all the great plays. So, it'll be interesting. Granted, that at the 5% ownership, that's what all the 5% of the lineups are probably going to be doing. So you may want to get a little bit more different if you're doing that. But I think he's a very interesting play. And then again, if Michael Thomas is out, I'll probably have a decent exposure. And $200 is just too cheap for me, man.
So the interesting thing about Marquez Callaway was week 7, he had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 75 yards. He ran 34 routes, and Traquan Smith ran 36. That was the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers. So there's a reason why he's priced down to 200, because especially if Michael Thomas is coming back, now you're talking about the 4th wide receiver in this offense. So be cautious. Don't just look at his last game and say, man, this guy is a great play. He is a great play potentially, but don't go all in on Marquez Callaway simply because He's going to be the fourth. Actually, he's going to be the fifth option with Kamara as well if Michael Thomas plays. But he does
And
have
maybe, I mean,
he does have the upside for sure.
I don't even know who Jawan Johnson is, but so sometimes our
Yeah,
player pools are a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, they've got him listed as the sixth wide receiver.
yeah,
Yeah, but he's still projected for more points than Deontay Harris. Granted, it's like half a point, and both are under one. But I mean, taking two lineups with him isn't a bad step, right? And that's what we mean
yeah.
when we're talking about getting exposure to these guys. Is we're rotating one or two lineups with him in.
Exactly. So when it comes to Emmanuel Sanders, he's at 5.8K. Obviously, if Michael Thomas sits this out, he's going to be a great option. He's the number one wide receiver. He had a coming out party a few weeks ago. He was very disappointing to start the season. But week 5, he had 14 targets, 12 receptions for 122 yards. And that was the last time he played. I think it's been a COVID situation with him, or I'm not exactly sure. I can't keep up with all these injuries. I just know that week 5 was the last time he played. And 3 weeks in a row, week 3, he had 15 fantasy points. Week 4, he had 15 fantasy points. Week 5, he had 27. So he had a nice little run there. I think him and Drew Brees started to gain some chemistry. They started to gain some trust. If Emmanuel Sanders is the number one wide receiver, Michael Thomas sits this game out, I'm likely to get a lot of Emmanuel Sanders for sure. And I wouldn't be afraid to get some Traquan Smith in there as well, stack him with Drew Brees, because that's going to be a low-owned stack, because I just don't think that people are going to remember that 4 weeks ago Emmanuel Sanders was doing well, and he's not priced up enough, maybe. I don't know how to handle this, but if Michael Thomas is sitting out, I think I'm going to have a good amount of Emmanuel Sanders, because I think the ownership will be low enough, because there's just so many options on the other side of the ball when it comes to wide receivers. Any last notes on wide receivers for the Saints?
No, I'm with you. It's really going to come down to the Michael Thomas situation. That'll dictate kind of where I go with Emmanuel Sanders. I'll probably be a little less on him than you are, but again, he's still a very talented wide receiver and can get there at 5.8K. So I'm with you.
So let's move on to the Saints tight ends, right? So while we're on this, the first thing I'm going to bring up here is it looks like our boy Taysom Hill, he had a receiving touchdown last week. DraftKings finally said, we don't want to deal with this guy anymore. We're going to price him up to 6K. He's technically listed as a quarterback, but Taysom Hill at 6K, just uncheck him. Don't even try to get cute. And put him in a couple of lineups for screenshot action on Twitter. Don't even do it. At 6K, there's no reason to have him. I love this guy because he was under $1,000 and he was getting opportunity in the red zone. He had the opportunity to break some slates, running some direct snaps, things like that. It's almost not even worth mentioning at this price. And the ironic thing is, I know he's going to get like freaking 3 touchdowns in this game now, of course.
Yeah,
because
he's
they
the
priced him
optimal
up.
captain because you called that. So
of course, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm not having any Taysom Hill today because he's priced up at a backup quarterback now, and he shouldn't be that price. He should be around $1,200, $1,500, and anything above that is not even worth mentioning. So we got Jared Cook at 5.4K. Clearly one of the top weapons for the Saints this season, especially with Michael Thomas out. I think Michael Thomas coming back is going to hurt Jared Cook a little bit when it comes to ownership and also when it comes to opportunity and targets. You also have Josh Hill at $200. I always like to play with some Josh Hill just because he's getting some red zone opportunities. There's a random, 3rd and 1 from the goal line where they do a little naked boot out with Drew Brees and toss him the ball wide open in the corner of the end zone, sort of a thing. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get to Josh Hill. There's a lot better opportunity today, and Adam Troutman, not even worth mentioning. What are your thoughts on Jared Cook this week?
Yeah, I like him. I don't know how much I'll get to him. It kind of depends on how the pricing and ownership go on the slate, but looks like he's doing a pretty decent amount with his targets, and he's scoring touchdowns this year. So
yeah,
I'll probably land on him a little bit. I won't touch the other two guys, but I actually might be more okay with playing Jared Cook than Rob Gronkowski. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So I like Jared Cook a little bit.
So last week, Jared Cook had a great game last week. He had 7 targets. He had 17% of the target share on the team. His air yards from last week was the highest on the team. He had 30% of the team's air yards. This season, he's actually one of the highest when it comes to end zone target share. I think Drew Brees, considering Drew Brees has a hard time throwing, a 15-yard out route this year, his arm strength is a lot less than it's been in the past, obviously, and there's a big drop off when it comes to quarterbacks like that. We saw it with Drew. We saw it with Peyton Manning. You see it where a guy can have a Pro Bowl season, and the next year he can barely complete a pass. I think he's still a great quarterback. He's smart enough to overcome any physical issues he's having, and I think the fact that Jared Cook, almost like a rookie tight end when it comes to security. Almost like a rookie quarterback, loving their tight ends. I think this is a similar situation because Jared Cook, he doesn't have to toss the ball outside the hash or down the field. He can play across the middle. I think Jared Cook and Drew Brees are very comfortable with each other. And when Jared Cook's running 32 routes and he's getting about 60% of the snaps this season, I like Jared Cook, and I think he's going to go way under-owned because he's not even the he's the second most popular tight end in this game, and he's probably like the 7th or 8th most popular position player in this game, maybe even more. Anyways, we'll move on to the Gronk side of the ball. Rob Gronkowski's at 6.4K, so he's priced reasonable this week. Let's look at him last week. What he was priced, he was at 8K last week. So they really priced him down, which makes him more enticing. And you also have Cameron Brate at 1,800, 1.8K. How are you handling the Rob Gronkowski side of things for the tight ends?
I mean, look, I'll have a decent amount of exposure to him. Tom Brady loves Rob Gronkowski, and it looks like Gronk is a little bit more healthy than he was at the beginning of the year. He's not 2012 Gronk by any means, but I mean, he's still a massive human being. And when he gets fired up, he literally, I mean, he's Derrick Henry at the tight end position. He's just throwing people to the ground and smashing their face into the grass. So he's fun to watch. I think he has the opportunity to put up some points. And my exposure to him will be entirely dictated on ownership. If he's high owned, I'll limit my exposure. But if he's low owned, I think he's a very interesting play. Especially because I'm going to be leaning towards, probably 4 stacks of Tampa. I think this is going to be a slate where we're looking at 3-3. Everyone's going to have a healthy exposure to both sides of the ball. So 4-2 is going to be interesting, and I'm not sure I'm going to want Gronk and Jared Cook in the same lineup. So those kind of things are going to be important when I'm building. But with that said, I think I'll have a pretty decent amount of Gronk just because his price is nice where he's at, and he's going to fit into a lot of lineups.
Yeah, Gronk at 6.4K is something to keep an eye on. I don't think I'm going to have any Cameron Brate. I usually, in the past, I've loved getting me some Cameron Brate. Simply because he does have that red zone potential, similar to Josh Hill. But you got to remember, Cameron Brate a few years ago was a highly touted fantasy tight end for this team. I know it's a different team, different quarterback, different coach, but I think Cameron Brate is a guy you need to just look at if you're trying to get value. Maybe throw him in one of your lineups, spread him out, something like that. Don't uncheck him. I'm going to actually have maybe 2 or 3 lineups with him just in case.
I agree with you on that. I think Cameron Brate's an interesting play. Again, Gronk could sprain his back the moment that he wakes up tomorrow. So
yeah, he could be chugging some Monster Energy drinks in the morning and pull just absolutely pull out a disc in his back. I mean, it's totally possible. We're talking about RoboCop here. This guy is being put together by machinery and. He's barely the guy. Yeah. The guy's knee braces and arm brace. I've never seen a guy this heavily padded, almost looking like a RoboCop here. Let's go to quickly kickers and defense. We don't really need to mention a whole lot here, but when it comes to kickers and defense, you got both kickers around 4K, 4.2K and 4K, and then the defenses, Buccaneers are at 4.6K. and Saints are at 3K. I think Saints at 3K is interesting here. I know that the Buccaneers have a high-powered offense, but the Saints can cause a little bit of. The Saints have been known to have a relatively decent defense and actually cause some turnovers. How are you handling kickers and defense here?
Well, first of all, the first game of the season, remember Tom Brady threw what, 2 pick sixes, or
Yeah, something
no?
like
So
that.
yeah, it was one pick six. So you're gonna have that opportunity in a division rivalry game. The Saints defense may come out to play, but then again, I still think that the most current trend for the Bucks is up and the Saints is down. So I think the Saints are in play at 3K, but just keep in mind that's going to be a little bit more of a risky play, obviously, given the
Yeah,
fact that the Tampa offense is crazy.
of course.
I think the Bucks are going to have opportunities for sacks, and I think that they're an interesting defensive play. Um, I mean, look, they got 3 sacks, 5, 3, 2, 6, 5, 1 this season. So, again, at 4,600, I'm not sure I'm going to have much exposure, but I don't think that they're entirely worth removing out of your player pool, for example. I think you might be able to build a lineup that is okay with the defenses. But again, I mean, if the total is going to stay close to 50, I don't feel like it's wise to overexpose. As far as the
Yeah.
kickers go, Ryan Suckup was in the winning lineup for the Tampa Bay, right? I'm pretty sure he was the winning captain in the Millie Maker. So honestly, I would fully anticipate that people are just riding recency bias on him, and I'm going to expect a little bit of a boost to his ownership projections. So honestly, those kickers being at 4 and 4.2K isn't very interesting to me. And really, the reason being is because you're either paying 1,000 or 1,800 or less really for value, or you're going to be jamming in one of these kickers to get your to save salary. So I think that's going to inflate both the kickers' ownership and again, these offenses score touchdowns. They're not kicking field goals. So, I mean, yeah, you might be able to get 8 points out of your kicker, but I think you can get 8 points out of Marcus Callaway or whatever. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not going to have too much here. These are good leverage. This is a good way to get leverage on the field because the optimizer is going to automatically build a kicker in, probably 2 kickers in. And a lot of people are going to play those optimals. So,
Yeah.
it's free leverage.
I mean, if median projection wise, these guys are going to grade out better than a lot of these wide receivers who just have a higher standard deviation. They have a lower floor, but they also have a higher ceiling in most cases. So, a kicker projected around 10 points at 4.2K, the optimizers are going to absolutely love Ryan Suckup. They're gonna
Right.
love Will Lutz, and I think you need to limit them and also just pay attention to why they're being put into so many lineups to fit it. The from a median projection aspect, their projections are going to be better because they have a higher floor. They're less dependent on big plays. So for me, I'm going to sort of cap them and just make sure I'm spreading out a little bit more. I don't think you need a kicker or defense in this game. I think there's a lot more value out there for now. So let's move on to our fate of the night. I think we both agree on this. We're both going with Antonio Brown. I think we've only agreed once or twice in the past, but I think today is pretty obvious. I think his ownership will be inflated because he's a name and he's a story and people are thinking about him. And if, to a casual fan who's building a DraftKings lineup on their phone, they might be more likely to throw in Antonio Brown over Chris Godwin, who has a probable tag next to him, or another wide receiver who's questionable or probable. I just think that Antonio Brown, his ownership is going to outweigh his probability of being in the optimal lineup. And look, this guy can go off for 2 touchdowns. I'm fully willing to accept the fact that he could end my night. I absolutely am willing to accept that fact. But you got to take a stand somewhere, and this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. How about you?
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, I just think Antonio Brown's pricing too is going to jack up his ownership a little bit. So, I think reaching a little bit further up for Chris Godwin is an amazing play. Again, this could all change tomorrow if Antonio comes in at like 6% ownership or something. I mean that obviously is a crazy number, but if he's anywhere under 25%, I'll probably shift a little bit and have some more exposure to him. But again, I'm not too excited about him. I don't think he's going to get there, and that's pretty much where I'm at with it.
The bottom line here is it's going to be entertaining one way or another. He's either going to have a terrible game, maybe he has a couple receptions, a couple targets. I'm excited to see how this turns out. If it works out against us, then it is what it is, but at least it'll be entertaining. All right, now let's move on to our captain choice of the night. This is our taking a stand at captain. Ellie, tell me about your choice, Latavius Murray for the Saints.
Look, this is risky as hell, and I'm not saying I'm going to build all my lineups with him at captain, but just his price is ridiculous. I mean, his projected points per dollar is easily the highest on the slate. You're going to be hard pressed to find value like this, and on a slate like this, having a 15-point captain, but still being able to play all the studs across the board is pretty unique, given the fact that I fully expect Alvin Kamara and Tom Brady to be jammed in that captain spot, which means you can't play all five. You can't play five solid guys. You're going to be taking a shot elsewhere. I like Latavius Murray a lot, and to be honest with you, I wasn't really paying attention to pricing because I think your captain play is also spectacular. And get into that, man.
So Chris Godwin here at 7,400, it allows you to have a balanced lineup. You're able to get some players. Your lineups are going to be a little bit more balanced. I like Latavius Murray as a captain choice as well because you could literally fit in every one of the best plays. And you could do a 3-3 stack if you wanted because no one's going to be playing Latavius Murray in the captain. I think he's going to be 3% owned in the captain, possibly lower. But you're able to get all the best plays. And Latavius Murray at captain, you don't necessarily need him to be the highest scoring player on the slate. You just need to mix in all those other high price players and hope that they absolutely go off. It's just it's a mixture of you want your flex guys to do good, but you don't want them to do too good to where they have to be in the captain. It's an interesting build by throwing in a $2,400 guy into the captain. As far as Chris Godwin goes, it's just a different build. 7,400. You could. I don't think he's going to be too high owned in the captain. I'm assuming he's probably going to be around 9-10% in the captain, which is usually my threshold. I like to play guys around the 6-7% range. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's just something I like. It's just something I'm more drawn to because I have a lot more fun. And being unique in Showdown, we all know that is king. It's if you're tying first place with 100 other people or even 20 or 30 other people, there's no point in playing. You're going to lose money over the long run. So getting a guy under 10% in the captain is, to me, important because then I can mix in high probability plays in the flex, and I don't have to randomly have 2 or 3 5% guys go off in the flex. So with Chris Godwin at 7,400 or 7,600, I apologize. He allows for some interesting plays, and he has high upside. Like I said, he can get 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and we're talking in the third quarter. This guy could be the highest scoring guy in the entire game, midway through or 3 quarters through. Especially with him being injured, I think the opportunity is there for him to be lower owned than he should be. Any thoughts on Chris Godwin and any thoughts about roster construction if we're using both of the, I love Latavius Murray as well. I'm going to have Chris Godwin and Latavius Murray. Those are probably going to be my 2 highest owned captains when it comes to my 40 lineups. I'll probably have half of my lineups minimum with these guys as captains.
I think, look, I think these are great captain plays simply because, we talked about it earlier. 3-3 is going to probably be the heaviest stack tomorrow night. So you can either go 4-2 to avoid that chalk, or you can run one of these guys in the captain spot, and most likely under 6% ownership there, and not have to get too crazy different. Then you can run Drew Brees and I don't know, maybe Will Lutz or whatever, because you're paying a little bit more for Chris Godwin. But I don't think you have to spend as much time getting different. So you can, run the optimizer, see what some of the highest projected lineups are with those two and captain. Because again, if they come under 6% or whatever, you're going to be very low duplicated, and it's not going to take much work to get different. You start fading guys like AB, and he's sitting at 50-60% ownership, then immediately you're golden, right? You can get there with just these guys. And to your point, Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin is really good, man. He, rarely do him and Mike Evans go off together, but when
Yeah.
one of them go off, we're talking 12 receptions, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, yes, as much as I'd love that, I'd even be cool with a balanced performance between both of them getting 100 yards and 6 receptions. But
Yeah.
I think Chris Godwin is a very good opportunity for that. And again, I just don't know if the Saints defense, their secondary, has enough firepower to prevent one of these wide receivers from going off. I love Chris Godwin.
So here's an interesting build with Godwin and captain, just to give you guys an example. For a 3-3 build, which is not something I would recommend with a 10% or 15% owned guy in the captain, but just to give you an example of what we're looking at with Chris Godwin in the captain. You got Chris Godwin, then you got Suckup and Brady, right? So you're covering. You got Tom Brady. We're hoping that Chris Godwin has 2 or 3 touchdowns, and you run it back with Ryan Suckup. Then you can afford to get Drew Brees, Latavius Murray, and Alvin Kamara in the same lineup. Like things like that. That's to me that's a chalky lineup to me. I'd rather go with something like a Chris Godwin, like a 2-4 stack, with Chris Godwin and Tom Brady, and then run it back with 4 other Saints potentially. So, anyways, those are just options lineup wise to think about. If you have another idea for captain, I would crunch out a couple hundred lineups with them and just look at the top, look at the ceiling on them, look at the optimal for that captain, and weigh it out against the other optimals against other captains, and just figure out what gives you good leverage. Look at ownership, go from there. So let's really quick, let's build this a lineup. Who do you want to build?
Chris Godwin.
You want to put Godwin in the captain just to feel it out? All right, let's do it. All right, so we're gonna put Chris Godwin in the captain here. How do we want to treat this? Do we want to do a little? Do we want to do a little 2-4 action, or you want to go 4-2 Bucks?
I actually want to go 2-4 Saints. I built the other way 4-2, and I'm curious as to what we can land on here.
2-4 with 4 Saints. Okay, cool. So we got to get Tom Brady along with Godwin, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's plug in Tom Brady here. Now, where do you want to go? We've got our 2 Buccaneers. We got our 2 Buccaneers players. How do you want to handle the Saints? Who do you want to put in first?
Let me see here. You know what? Go ahead and throw Jared Cook in there.
I like it. All right. In my opinion, I'm okay with fading Breeze in this particular build. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing, because then we can jam in. Honestly, I like Kamara and Murray again.
Yeah, I absolutely love that build here. So let's look at what we got. So this leaves us with 9,000, right? So you have the high upside of Godwin in the captain. He's going to be medium owned when it comes to captain. So if we are by fading Breeze, gets us a little bit more leverage when it comes to ownership. You're capturing if Tom Brady throws a touchdown pass to Scotty Miller, if he vultures a goal line touchdown here, you're capturing a lot of the additional points that the Buccaneers can score, but you'll have the upside at Godwin at captain. Cook, Kamara, and Murray is great. That spreads it out. I think you're looking at a lot of the offense right there. Obviously minus Drew Brees. How do we want to handle the final New Orleans player in the flex? You got 9,000 remaining. We could go with, let's see. Interesting. I think we're gonna need to leave a lot on the table with this.
I mean, look, so if you want to get crazy here, actually, this isn't even that crazy. Throw in Manny Sanders, and then you might be able to even
I love that, dude.
swap. I mean, look, I would probably run this lineup, but I think you're different enough here, fading Breeze and getting kind of the middle of the pack guys. Well, the handcuff running with the running backs, tight end, and Manny Sanders. You could probably throw Tom Brady into the captain and just swap him and Godwin, kind of eat up some of that salary.
Yeah, you're right.
That'll
You're right.
probably be a chalkier version of this build, but I mean, even then, it's still not a bad play.
So let's pull Cook out and see what we can get for Cook here when it comes to the Saints. So we got 8.6K left. I guess that really doesn't leave us with much. I guess Cook is our only option. Now, most people are the reason why 3-3s are going to be popular, because if you look at this lineup, you can jam in. You could jam in Mike Evans here.
Right.
Look, this is going to be popular. Look, you got a 3-3. This is going to be a relatively popular and duped lineup. But a way to get around that, instead of playing that third guy that just fits in so much easier, you pay down for a Jared Cook, and you still have high upside. Jared Cook can outscore Evans. I think there's a decent chance he outscores Evans, simply because Godwin, if this game script comes through, Godwin's going to get all the opportunity. Mike Evans and Godwin in the same lineup, I just don't love that. I just, like you said, one guy usually goes off, and the other guy is the decoy, or for whatever reason, and it's hard to predict who's going to go off. Do you want to run one real quick here with Latavius Murray in the captain, just to get an idea? Let's try it real quick. So, Latavius Murray,
Tampa with the 4.
Okay, yeah, I like that. So Latavius Murray, if I can find him, he's so cheap. He's so low down here.
Yeah, they don't even have him in the captain player pool.
All right, Kamara. I love that, dude. Right there, I'm telling you, right there, you are probably competing in 100,000 lineups. You're probably competing with like 1% of the people, just with having Kamara and Murray having Murray in the captain, and also throwing Kamara in there. Like, you're so unique, but you have upside. All right, so
and honestly, I can't think of a safer handcuff in the entire NFL. A 1 and 2 a running back, like it. Seriously, I will go. Like, I might look this up tonight and go team by team, but I don't think there's a better stack. Yeah, they're not going to use any of their backups. The only other person that's going to have an opportunity to touch the ball in the backfield is Taysom Hill. So I think this is just easy to play.
Latavius Murray starts the game at running back. They hand him the ball to start the game. And we all know that Kamara is going to get worked in. We all know that. Now, the question being this week is if Mike Thomas comes back, maybe Kamara is in the game more as a running back. It's hard to tell. But to me, over the course of this season and even last season, we know that Latavius Murray, he gets volume. And to me, at $2,400, you got to go with this guy. All right, so how do we got to go Tom Brady. I mean, I'm not fading Tom Brady this week because I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think you can get different in different areas. So we'll throw Tom Brady in.
Chris Godwin.
Get our boy Chris. You know who I want to go with here? Little Rob Gronk, bro.
I love it. And how much
Brady?
Is left?
We got 10.6K. We got tons. So we can get whoever we want here.
I mean, shit, throw in Mike Evans. I mean, again, they might be negatively correlated, but if you're running this, I mean, Mike Evans still has a better chance of putting up 15 points than pretty much anybody else we're going to buy. So
exactly. And look, here's my point. By running a 4-2, you're automatic, and in this case it's a 2-4. You're automatically different because if we just optimize this, let me pull Evans out. Let me just hit optimize. It's going to throw Michael Thomas in. This is now a 3-3.
Right.
Like, it wants to get that other highest, really high price player on the other team in. So you're just taking a step down when it comes to, you're relying on more Tampa Bay scoring, but in my opinion, it makes you so much more different. So,
here, I do want to say one thing is, That's not a terrible build, even throwing in Michael Thomas, because Latavius Murray is going to
Yeah.
be at 2% captain ownership.
So it
But
doesn't
keep
matter
in
at that
mind,
point, pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
well, kind of, but we do want to make sure that we're noting the handcuff. We're expecting Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara to get a shitload of the offense, right?
Yeah.
So that is going to impact Michael Thomas. But again, Michael Thomas could have 10 targets, 10 receptions, and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, I'm personally going to go 2-4. I don't like 3-3 stacks. I'm just not a huge fan.
Me neither.
But I mean, it's still safe, or considering the fact you got Murray at captain and the handcuff. So, those are the things that are going to get you different without having to do some dumbass shit like, play Javon Wims and Derek Jeter, right? Because you don't have anybody else, right? There's no point in putting practice squad guys on your roster, which we completely learned on Thursday night, other than Richie James. So, yeah, I digress, but we can continue building here.
I think we're done. I think we're done. Like, these are obviously, don't copy our builds if you want. Whatever. I would highly suggest creating your own builds, but just to give you an idea of what's possible, and a relatively unique but high upside roster construction. Those are kind of builds that we are going to be doing.
Right. This is an activity for us to kind of identify what builds are, how people are going to be building, right? We want to know what the optimizer is building. We want to know what the pricing looks like, because Draftkings prices this a certain way so that certain things can't happen.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to identify. We're not going to be making any decisions about these plays until we see the ownership projections. Literally, we could have everything backwards. Antonio Brown might end up being our captain of the day, right? And then we might fade Chris Godwin and Latavius Murray, depending on how ownership. I highly doubt that that's going to happen. But the point is to build through this and find out where the construction is going to lean. Because, like Tyson was saying, if you have the opportunity to play Michael Thomas in a 3-3 stack versus Mike Evans, and most people are going to lean towards Michael Thomas. And that's what we're trying to see here. And if the pricing is somewhat similar, then you can understand where people are going to be leaning. Like that extra $200 going down from Godwin to AB might be the difference that allows a lot of people to start jamming in some of these other receivers or other players. And that's why, Godwin might be just a great leverage play in general, regardless of whether or not you have him in captain. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is identify what the construction is going to look like tomorrow, and then see how we can pivot off of it. We don't want to tie with the field, so let's see what the field's trying to do, is essentially what we're doing.
So a lot of people just by default say, how do I get different? And the default answer is, well, you can just leave some salary on the table. Well, yes, that is true, right. But at the same time, you don't. If you have a 4% owned guy in the captain, you might not need to leave 5,000 on the table. You can go up there and get to 49.5K if that's how your builds work out. It's all on a case by case basis. Don't just automatically say, you know what, I can't spend 48 or 49,000 in salary, just as a general rule, because it depends on your ownership in the captain. It depends on your multiplied ownership across your lineup. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to stick by these certain rules. It's all about you and your lineup and your builds. Figure out the ownership in the captain, and you could easily multiply all the ownership of your lineup together, and then multiply that by the amount of entries, and you can actually get the amount of dupes that are projected for that amount of entries. That's just something that we like to do because I can better judge my lineup. I'm not going to play a 50 duped lineup. I'm just going to completely erase it. I'm not even going to play it. But if it's 10 or less, or 20 or less even, I'm going to consider those. And that's a good way to identify how to get different. Not necessarily adding up the cumulative of the ownership. That is different, because you can have 180% ownership and have a guy who's 1%, and you're automatically different. Anyways, anything to add on dupes for Showdown?
Yeah, absolutely. Minimizing your duplications is so important. I have tanked the last couple of slates, right? But I'm still up pretty big just because of that one win that I had that Sunday night game. it was not very duplicated, and I tied for fourth place or fifth place with 3 or 4 other people. I've lost. I really have lost a couple of these nights, right? And I think I won $1 back on one of the slates and
Yeah.
lost the rest of it. So it yes, you are going to lose more sticking to a game script and kind of sticking to a certain plan on your builds. But the point is the upside's there. All you need is one of those lineups to hit in even top 10. And you're going to pay off, a month's worth of gambling essentially. So yeah, it's worth it. From firsthand experience, it's worth it. I haven't taken down a milli maker, but it does give you taking down one of those contests, getting in the top 10 makes a huge difference for your bankroll.
If you study the best players, not necessarily for Showdown, but just generally speaking, the best DFS players are using leverage, and they're banking on the fact that one of these nights, the low probability plays are going to hit, and over the course of an entire season, those plays hitting once or twice and them losing double, triple, quadruple those amount of times is still going to be okay, because if you pull in 10K, if you pull in 50K, if you pull in $1 million, your expected value is going to be positive over the course of the season, as opposed to just playing the best plays and min cashing half the time. It's not worth it. If you min cash every day and then you lose for a week in a row, your bankroll is empty. Like you have to play 10% of your bankroll, whatever it is, and bank on the fact that you just need 1 or 2 wins a season to be profitable. Anything else to add before we send it out?
No, man. Keep an eye on injuries. Keep an eye on ownership. It's going to change everything.
How do you how are you thinking your prediction for this game? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be. I think it's 31-24 type game, Tampa Bay. I think it'll be a little close, but I don't think New Orleans is going to be able to pull it off. Tampa Bay's a better team right now.
I don't think the Saints can win either, but you got to remember, these are division rivals. They play each other 2 times a year. The Saints won the first game, which is, that was Tom Brady's first game. It wasn't great for him. But these are division rivals. Anything can happen. We see it every year in every single division. These teams that play each other, the records don't matter. The Vegas lines don't matter. Anything can happen in this game. If the Saints came out and won 34-10, I would be a little shocked, but it wouldn't be like the craziest thing I've ever seen, because these are both 2 good teams, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and they have just roster-wise some of the best teams in the NFL. Anyways, keep an eye on ownership. Please like this video if you don't mind. Our goal is going to be 50 likes on this video. We really appreciate your guys' support. We have a Discord open up that we're going to be talking before lock. Any news, you can follow us on Twitter and subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're doing 3 of these videos a week, and thank you guys so much. We'll see you for Monday Night Football. Have a good one.